6:31. I call the February 10 Planning Board meeting to order. Excuse me. The first item on the agenda, the minutes of January 20th. Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, I recommend approval of the minutes of January 20th as prepared.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Excuse me. We go on to public hearings, I should say. The first are the zoning articles for the April 2015 town meeting. First one we're going to have a presentation on is to amend the zoning map from agricultural AA to public use, 8.86 acres at 0 Thomas Landers Road. Assessors map 15-04-016-004, requested by the Board of Selectmen. Brian will speak to
You have
that.
to read notices, don't you? Madam Chairman, don't we have to read notices for this?
Oh, I'm sorry. We have notices for all these. Okay, sorry, Paul. Can you read, okay, or do you want Bob to?
No, I can.
Okay.
Planning Board public meeting notice was posted on 1/23/15, 1/30/15, and 2/6/15. There were 29 abutters. Notices were sent by certified mail on 1/23/15, and 28 signed receipts were returned. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Brian Curry, for your record, I'm the town planner. I'm here representing tonight the Board of Selectmen with regards to the Article 1 in your public hearing. In your packages tonight, you should have a series of handouts, first of which is a site give you a perspective of where this fits in with the key public infrastructure improvements that the town is contemplating with regards to the sewer system upgrade. You should also have an aerial photograph in your packages, giving you a little bit of the environments of the site. You should also have a locus of the assessor's map, showing you, you should have a locus map of assessor's information. And you should also have a copy of the zoning map. And you'll see the greens are the GAAs, the purples are the public uses. You should be looking in this area right here. I put a copy of the zoning map up on the board for the public to see. Hopefully I'm not getting in the way of the TV cameras. And if I could get that thing to work, which I can't, I would put the locus up. I apologize for that. But the locus is just south of Thomas Landers Road, in this vicinity here, for the benefit of the public that's here. Maybe I'll try this one more time. You have to drop it. F4? Okay, I'll do my best. I'm trying. So the locus is currently zoned agricultural AA. And the petition would request that the town meeting vote to rezone it to public use. In public use zones, as you can see, the entire wastewater treatment facility, if you look at your zoning map, the entire wastewater treatment facility and the environments to the east, owned by Town of Falmouth, which is the transfer facility, are zoned for public use. Public use allows for all municipal uses as a matter of right. In the agricultural zone, there are ways to utilize the site for the purposes that the town envisions. But seeing how the electorate has voted to spend their monies here for the purposes that the bonds were issued and the monies were spent, we think it appropriate at this time to bring it forward to the town meeting in April to zone for public uses. In this area, the town envisions, if you could look at your handout with regards to the public infrastructure improvements. In this area, the town has identified to use it for infiltration basins. This is where the treated effluent would go after it has been brought up to tertiary standards. It would outfall into two, I believe, basins, infiltrate into the ground, and then migrate its way towards Buster's Bed. So that, in a nutshell, is the purpose of the rezoning. Make it consistent with the land uses around and for the purposes of the town intended to use it for. I defer to any questions at this time to the board.
Anybody have questions?
I have one.
Yes,
No, I know.
Mr. Curry, the three properties north of the site we're talking about, are they also owned by the town?
They are not owned by the town, they are privately held.
Good.
One is zoned light industrial C, and one is zoned, would still be a zone agricultural double.
All three?
To the north, two properties to the north are privately owned, they're not held by the town.
Any other questions? Okay. Any comments from the public, please? And please come up to the podium and state your name.
Yes, my name is Matthew Hanley. I'm the property owner directly north, abutting the property that we're talking about rezoning today to public use. I've already, in multiple forums, addressed my concerns about this site. I don't feel that they've been properly addressed. But because of this development and the change in zoning, my family has been forced to abandon our agricultural farm because we won't be able to have well water with a discharge site directly abutting the property. It's not allowed to have public wells within a certain radius of a discharge site. Because of that, I'm standing in front of the planning board today, and we've decided to go light industry A because we have to make use of our property. This will bring more jobs to the town of Falmouth. The planning board has previously identified our property multiple times since in the last 20 years as, prime real estate for development as light industry. So I'd like to see if I could, what the planning board's comments would be. And I also, in reading the town bylaws, there's something in there about light industry and public use property. So I just want to make sure that there's not going to be any issues with having public use property next to industrial property.
I would suggest that you talk with the town planner about that. You'll get a more definitive, you'll be able to discuss it at greater length. And this is not the proper forum tonight to discuss
No, I can
that.
appreciate that. I'm
Okay.
asking the board, this is a public hearing, and I'm publicly asking the board what their feeling is about this, and is it going to impact my property? There's a reason why we have public hearings, so the public can hear comments or the board's feelings on certain issues. I see it more and more in town meetings is that, people that have serious questions about any town project are, pushed off to the side. Go talk to the Board of Health, go talk to the Water Department, off mic. Well, I'm asking you, I'm not saying make me promises, but I'm saying if you're very familiar with the planning bylaws, do you see any concerns about our family changing from agricultural A to light industry A?
We can make that part of our discussion when we discuss the proposed change.
You'll be discussing it tonight?
Right now, we're just hearing information. And
So
we're
you will be
hearing your
discussing it tonight?
concerns. We may or we may not discuss it tonight. I don't know, because we do have a long agenda, and we've got, 5 of these, excuse me, and a couple of other things to do. If we do not discuss it tonight, we will discuss it at next Tuesday's meeting.
Okay, thank
Okay?
you.
So that gives you a date that you'll know if it's not done tonight.
All right,
Okay?
so it will be addressed then?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
That's part of
thank
our
you.
discussion as to what's going on. Thank you for coming. Is there anyone else who wishes to ask any questions or voice any concerns? Okay. The next on the agenda is to amend, 240-28 to delete professional, and Paul Glynn is the applicant in this case.
Paul, do you have to read it
You're
again?
discussing. Okay. Thank you and welcome.
Good evening, here. Attorney Eric Turkington, representing Paul Glenn here tonight. Paul, as you know, is quite capable of representing himself or anybody else before this body or any other body, but he is mindful of the old phrase about a lawyer representing himself having a fool for a client. So he has asked me to speak on his behalf tonight, though he is right here and may join in later if there's any discussion to join into here. But he is the prime applicant here for this very minor zoning change. Just to give people, I guess we don't have a slide, but I think you're all quite familiar with the area that this particular bylaw covers. What it says is if it's general residence property in certain locations, it can have professional office space in it. The locations are limited to Locust Street and Palmer Avenue, and not even all Locust Street and Palmer Avenue, but certain areas have been taken out over the years by town meeting for one reason or another. But the areas that are left are those where professional offices can be allowed in a general residence district. You can't do it in Water Street and Woods Hole, you can't do it on Jones Road, but you can do it in these certain specified areas of Locust Street and Palmer Avenue. The bylaw has been in place for 31 years, and in fact, the first applicant when the bylaw was created was Paul Glynn for his building on 49 Locust Street, which I think you're all familiar with that building. It's a very attractive building. It would be attractive anywhere in town. And so I was representing him then too, 31 years ago, so not much has changed. But one thing that has changed, or should change, is the word professional. And let me just describe the reasoning behind why that is. The point of this bylaw 31 years ago was the planning board recognized that there are two main ways into town, and Palmer Avenue is one of them. So they could see that it was changing, and it was not going to be highly desirable for residences given the amount of traffic and increase in population. But by the same token, they wanted to keep the entrance of the town looking nice, looking like the New England town that we are, that we're proud of. So they created this special way of allowing offices, but they didn't want to make it too broad, so they limited the number of parking spaces. It was limited, and now we've had it in place for 30 years, and we can see the planning board did a good job. In spite of the town having doubled in population, we still have a very attractive entryway into this town. When you come in Route 28, down Palmer Avenue and down Locust Street, it's attractive, more attractive than most towns have been able to say it for themselves. There is a great mix of uses on the street, and including some pre-existing, some grandfathered, some allowed by right. Lawyers, dentists, chiropractors, building companies, social workers, financial advisors, consultants, designers, they're all on this street, and they're all contributing to the attractiveness of the street. So why would you want to take the word professional out? Well, first of all, there's no definition of the word professional in the town bylaws. There's no guidance for the Board of Appeals. They're sort of on their own hook to decide what professional means. And that's not their job. They should not be trying to discern without any guidance in state law or in the bylaw what's professional and what's not professional. Secondly, the word professional really serves no purpose. If the goal of the bylaw is to encourage the enhancement of the attractiveness of this entryway into this town, limiting it to professional offices doesn't do that. Just by way of two examples, the Johnson Home Building and the Mike Duffany Building, those are the two of the most attractive buildings on Palmer Avenue. Neither would qualify as professional office space. But again, they're good looking. They're exactly what we had in mind for the town, and this bylaw wouldn't have allowed them to be there if they had to be built under this bylaw. The current bylaw is also unnecessarily restrictive and discriminatory. There's no reason why office space for other than white-collar professionals should be prohibited in this area. Office space is office space. And when you start getting into deciding who's who qualifies and who doesn't as a professional. You cross the line between planning and being fairly arbitrary. And I can sort of give one hypothetical example that I thought of on the way over here. Suppose there was a small scientific company that made groundwater flow measurements, for example. And suppose that company wanted to have office space in this area. Would they qualify as professional? No. Should they be precluded from being in this area? Absolutely not. It's exactly what this town wants and needs, and it is exactly what this area has shown to be supportive of. So by taking that one word out, you can keep the town looking terrific in this area and sort of move this bylaw into the 21st century.
Does anybody on the board have questions of Eric? Okay, Jim.
I just have a general question, this definition of professional office space also reoccurs in 240-48B, which is the downtown zoning, and it uses professional office space. It probably, if you go through our zoning, appears in more spaces. I just happened to find it in another one tonight. Do you think is it a problem everywhere, or is it just in the general residential zone?
Well, we're not concerned with it anywhere else.
I know, but I'm just asking where we move.
Yeah.
That's a question. We need to clean up our zoning, and
Well, that's exactly
it sounded like it would be a problem everywhere, the way you described it.
right. And if you look up definitions, you won't find it.
Any other questions? Ralph?
Yes, Mr. Turkington, you said that you made a couple of comments about the fact that these offices wouldn't qualify as professional, and yet there's no definition for professional. So you confused me there. So are you referring to the word professional in the 240-28 paragraph E,
Yes,
where it says professional offices?
that's right.
So you would delete the word professional and just start with offices?
Office, exactly.
Okay, so what is gained if there's no definition for professional? What is gained by removing the word professional?
Well, right now, if somebody comes in and wants to take advantage of this bylaw and put their business in this space, and it's an office kind of business, if they're a lawyer, no problem. That's clearly professional, but doctors actually are precluded. Medical clinics can't be there, but once you get beyond obvious professionals, like, lawyers or CPAs or something, you've run out of, it then becomes fairly arbitrary. Who's professional? Is a social worker professional? Is a financial advisor professional? Is a designer a professional? Is a consultant a professional? Is a home builder's office professional? Clearly not. But the Board of Appeals has no guidance on these things, and if they stick to the word professional as commonly understood, they're going to be precluding a lot of uses that shouldn't be precluded.
What is the dictionary's definition of professional?
I don't have a dictionary right here with me, and I could.
I wish I had one. I wish I'd looked it up.
But I think our Board of Appeals shouldn't have to go looking to the dictionary for guidance. I think they shouldn't have to make the choice.
To me, if a person conducts themselves professionally, it could be a wide range of occupations.
Well, if you were on the Board of Appeals, that would be the way it might come out. But some people would go look at a court case, and there is one from a couple of decades ago that says a professional is someone with an advanced degree. Well, that's a definition. It's not the one the town uses because it isn't in any of our books, but it's out there. So I think it's the lack of having a definition makes it arbitrary, and that's the difficulty here.
So instead of proposing a definition of professional in our definition section, you're saying take out the word professional in one part of our zoning bylaw and not making it apply to other areas.
Well, if the word professional is showing up in other areas, as you say, that would be part of a larger effort in these other areas to repair. But in this one, it's pretty clear cut why it's a problem and why we don't need it.
It's almost like spot zoning, only it's spot wording.
Spot
It's
editing.
spot wording, it's spot definitions, it's spot something or other. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Paul, you have something?
Mr. Turkington, I'm just concerned about the word professional again. I'm a professional engineer, I know what that means. But in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, if you're licensed for any kind of discipline, does that make you a professional? For example, a hairdresser is licensed, does that become a profession based on the term professional? If you use a licensing definition.
Your guess is as good as mine, and that's another reason to get the word professional out of here. 'Cause your definition of it, based on what the state says, is usually broad.
That's where I'm confused.
Sure.
Okay, Bob, you had a question.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. I was always under the impression that what separates a professional from, say, a professional builder from a handyman is the fact a professional builder is a licensed person that is performing a service for pay, as opposed to somebody who's just a weekend carpenter doing their own work in their own house. If you're a photographer, a lot of people are photographers. What separates a professional from an amateur is the fact that a professional is going to go out and get jobs and get paid for it. So I'm just wondering, if we take the word professional out, what gate does that open? I mean, where the definition of professional is fairly broad at this point. So would we be eliminating other entities from entering into agreements on property with this zoning and with the word professional in it?
Well, you'd be putting it to the point of being office space as the sole criterion. And as we've seen, you get three definitions of professional right here among the first three people who thought about it. And that doesn't work when you're trying to have criterion for the zoning board of appeals to consider.
But you used...
With office space is easier to consider because, a builder can, obviously they're not doing their building there, but they're doing their office back work there, and that would be allowed without anybody having to determine whether they were in or out of the definition.
See, you mentioned Johnson Homes and definitely where I know with brothers in the trades that have offices. They're out doing their trade work, but they still have their office, and I'm sure that's what those spaces are used for. So I don't see what the difference would be if it was anybody else who uses that site to do their office work, their paperwork or whatever, and then goes off site to do something else. I mean, you need someplace, not everybody has their office set up in the cabin to pick up.
And that's the way it should be, but with the word professional in there, you've created a class of folks who can be defined as professional and a whole class who can't, and there's no clear definition of which is which.
I think what we've got going here is really a lot of, Doug.
Well, I found a couple of different definitions, and one is relating to or connected with a profession. One is of a person engaged in a specified activity as one's main paid occupation rather than a pastime. That doesn't mean it has to be a white-collar professional, just that it's a professional use. And then the third is relating to, connected, young professional people, white-collar, non-manual, but that's not really a definition, it's just an adjunct to the previous definition of relating to or connected with a profession. So I think there's room with the definitions for other non-college type people if you feel like we're being discriminatory.
I think we've got a lot of food for thought here when we come to the discussion of this.
Yeah.
We've really defined what we should be discussing when we're contemplating what kind of a recommendation we want to make to town meeting on this. Okay, is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? Yeah.
My name's Jeff Oppenheim. I'm the owner of a property on Locust Street. I think if I wasn't the first, I was the second property to be licensed under this bylaw. Wynn Davis, who's a former town planner, first professional planner in the town of Falmouth and on Cape Cod, worked on this bylaw. And he was also a real estate partner in this building with me. I can tell you from experience that our community has defined professional to mean someone who holds an advanced degree and is licensed by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it is an elitist sort of definition, and it prevented me from renting some 15 years ago, maybe, or approximately, to someone who was hired by our hospital to recruit physicians to our community when we were in short supply for primary physicians, because that person did not hold an advanced degree. And he wasn't licensed, but he was working very hard to bring doctors to our community at a time when we didn't have physicians. I can also tell you that my wife, who is a registered dietitian, was not able to practice in my building until perhaps the last 10 or 15 years, when the Commonwealth decided that dietitians should be licensed. You know, we don't have a definition, that is true, but I can tell you in practice, the Zoning Board of Appeals has been using that two-pronged test, and it is limiting. For example, it wouldn't allow a real estate broker who doesn't hold an advanced degree, but who is licensed by the Commonwealth, to open an office in this area. And I don't believe it would allow general contractors who are licensed by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, who don't hold advanced degrees, like engineering degrees, to be permitted in this area of our community. So I would urge you to take a very, careful look at this and to broaden the definition. This was intended to be a buffer area between the industrial land, which is located behind Palmer Avenue and Locust Street, where we have wood lumber and where we have the Steamship Authority. And I think it's acted in that way, and I think it would be a similar buffer whether we had, folks like real estate brokers or general contractors versus attorneys, engineers, social workers, and other people who have, meet that dual test. Thank you.
Other comments?
Hi, Paul Glenn. My comments will be mainly about the fact that I'm a neighbor there, too. I lived on Sitters Pond Road for about 3 years before started to work at Locust Street. So I'm very familiar with it. The motivation here is to keep Locust Street the historical entrance into our town, maintain that character. You don't get to see the character of Locust in Palmer Ave too often. Last week was one of them, no cars. And it really probably looked the same as it did 100 years ago for about a day. It's a very busy road. When the air conditioning doesn't work, you can't hear yourself on the phone. You can't hear other people on the phone because there's so much traffic on it. So in one sense, it is still that a beautiful historic entrance into the town, but in another sense, it's as much traffic there as any place else. It's not created by the people on Locust Street. I really want to keep it that way. So I'm not trying to do something, no idea of any type of business trip involved here. It's to keep the character of it. But the motivation really is there's a chill anytime you don't really know. Well, who can go there? How do you answer that question? what type of offices? Someone asks you, I have this type of office, can I go there? Maybe. You know, so the idea is we want offices. We definitely want offices, but we want to have something where we don't have to see whether your degree, your license or your degree or whatever. I think we have all kinds of differences of opinion among the lawyers that have thought about this as to what this means really right now when you add the word professional. I think we just want it to be offices, and we hope the Board of Appeals will continue to impose strict site control on it, and the planning board if the planning board is on it. And the Historical District Commission certainly imposes strict criteria on the buildings. We don't want to change any of that. We just want to make it so that you can answer that question. Who can come into these buildings? And it's hard to, you get 3 different answers from us tonight, I think, exactly. And you might get 7 answers from this board now. If you just have its offices, and then the board does its job to make sure that the site is done right, I think we've accomplished what we want to accomplish on Lucas Street. That's the motivation of it there. So thank you.
Other public comment? Okay, any further questions from the board? Okay.
Make for good discussion.
Yeah. Next one on the zoning articles is to amend 240-45B to read, the Board of Appeals may waive the floor area limitations for non-marine related uses in 240-44B, C, and D, and in 240-45A and D for those lots that as of January 1st, 2015, do not border a water body. Robert Ament.
Good evening, I'm Bob Ament. I'm a Falmouth attorney, and I filed this article on behalf of a client, Falmouth Heights Marina, Inc. The client owns the property at 56 Scranton Avenue, about across the street from the Windfall Market. And the planning board and town meeting are quite familiar with the property. 2 years ago, the planning board recommended to town meeting the rezoning of the property to business redevelopment. Town meeting didn't approve that. There was some confusion at town meeting about what the impact would be, thinking that that would allow 4-story buildings, confusion about a 40B project on Main Street. Efforts had been made previously to rezone the property. Because this particular property is in the marine zoning district and is not on the water, and the marine zoning district requires that non-marine related uses be limited to half of the floor area on the property. Now, the marine zoning district was adopted in the 1980s for a very important purpose, which was to protect Falmouth Harbor and some of the other water bodies in town that are used for marina purposes, to protect them from residential development. The marine zone was adopted shortly after the Boatyard condominium was created on Falmouth Heights Road. And so the marine zoning district doesn't allow any residential uses, except there is a provision for one apartment or one dwelling unit that can be used as security for marina use. So the purposes of the marine district are boatyards and all that means. But the bylaw then goes and says that by special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals, other uses are allowed, restaurants of certain types, offices and retail, non-marine related activities that can occupy up to 1/2 of the building. The problem with a marine district property that isn't on the water because of the way the boundaries of the district were created is that there's great difficulty in finding a tenant who qualifies. Now, who would qualify other than somebody who actually puts boats in the water or repairs them in order to be able to put them right back in the water? A real marina, which we fortunately have some in these districts. What's marine related? A boat brokerage? A retailer who sells marine related items, such as gun and tackle, which used to be in the building that my client now owns, where they sold lots of fishing gear and the like. That's a use that now is satisfied in that neighborhood by West Marine, which is almost immediately across the street, but not in the Marine District. A bait shop or a fishing shop like Eastman's tackle shop, which is on Main Street. Maybe an admiralty lawyer is a marine-related work, but none of these require being on the water or near the water. And if you're not on the water in the Marine District, you can't do the type of marine-related activity, which is what the bylaw was supposed to protect. So, at the property that is the reason for my being here tonight, there is a restaurant, sells seafood, has a nice view of the water, and there's a brokerage office. They sell some waterfront real estate when they can. But these aren't marine-related uses. To have those approved once Gun and Tackle left some years ago, we had to get a special permit. That's fine. Activity was reviewed to make sure it wouldn't have an adverse impact on the Marine District. But gradually, marine-related businesses left, in particular a boat dealer and a boat broker. They left. So there's now vacant space in this building, and the owner has been trying for years to find a marine-related use interested in going into the property, and has to date been unsuccessful. And we've been dealing with this now for, I believe, about 8 years. So the planning board recommended the rezoning of this property from marine use to business redevelopment 2 years ago, and as I said, it didn't pass town meeting. It was recommended to me by the town planner that we try again after when I came to him and said this is still a problem, and suggested to make it B3 because the property across both streets of this corner lot are B3 zoned. But I also suggested maybe there's an easier way to do this. Maybe we should modify the conditions that are in the marine zoning district to keep it marine, prohibiting residential use of such a property, but allow the Board of Appeals the flexibility, taking into account all the criteria for granting special permits to make sure that there aren't detrimental impacts that outweigh benefits. Allow the Board of Appeals, in the case of those few properties which are in the marine zone but aren't on the water, to allow a greater percentage of non-marine related use on the property than is otherwise allowed. That's what this bylaw does. That's all that it does. It says that the Board of Appeals, after public hearing, can allow non-marine related use to exceed the 50% limitations that are in the bylaw. It's really as simple as that. It's a good solution, which keeps it marine zone, allows the marina type uses. And as I said, I think it may be important to protect adjacent marina property from residential development next door, which can have an adverse impact, or the people there are adversely impacted by the marine district. you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them for you.
Does anybody on the board have?
I think, you said B3, I think you meant B2 for the properties across the street.
You're correct. That was my mistake. It was B2. In fact, that's what our article, that's also. So we figured we'd try both angles, rezone the property to what it is across the street, B2, correct. I think this is actually the better solution, keeping it as marine zone, but giving the Board of Appeals special permit authority to waive the limits that otherwise apply. Now, there are only, at most, a handful, I believe only 3 properties in Falmouth that are in the Marine District, which are not on the water. There's this one. There's Park Cleaners on Scranton Avenue. And there's a property on Falmouth Heights Road near McDougal's that's used for an office. Now, those properties are pre-existing non-conforming. They're actually not limited by this because they can go to the Board of Appeals under Section 240-3 and change the use. When Park Cleaners someday wants to do something different, though, they've got a way to do that because 100% of that property is non-marine related use. 56 Scranton Avenue has the unfortunate situation of not being pre-existing non-conforming with respect to this issue, the percentage, because Gun and Tackle was there. And when Gun and Tackle left, and the other marine-related businesses left, that's when the problem began.
Ken?
You actually answered my question. It was how many, did he know how many properties this would cover?
And that's throughout town.
And I very specifically provided in drafting the bylaw that this would apply to existing lots that are in this condition. I didn't think we want somebody modifying their lot lines in the future in order to qualify to take their property, to put a property line so their portion of the property is no longer on the water. This only applies to the existing lots not on the water.
Doug?
So it would remain in the Marine District, so it's not available for residents, but it would open up the office or whatever type use for other than marine.
The bylaw doesn't change the use restrictions as to types of uses, which is residential, nor does it add any new uses that would be allowed from what the Marine District bylaw already allows. It simply allows those uses, which are allowed by the Board of Appeals, to cover, encompass more of the building if the Board of Appeals determines that's suitable.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes, Ralph?
Yes, Mr. Ahmed, as I recall, the last time we brought this before the town meeting, that there was, I think you made a PowerPoint presentation, at least you had something up on the screen, and we don't have anything in front of us tonight. I'm a visual person. Before we discuss this, I was wondering if you could provide us with some kind of a map. Okay, where'd you get that?
From Jim.
I prepared maps for all the articles tonight.
I do have maps.
Okay,
but
well, all right, well, anyway, my point is, I would like to see a map that covers the property that you're talking about, the water, the harbor, in other words, and the 2 other property, and it would extend down to, it would include the 2 other properties that you mentioned. Because I need that to discuss that, and I know that I will be approached by the people in Precinct 8 who want to know more information about this, particularly at a precinct meeting. And so if I have that, I will be a better educated person.
Well, of course, I can provide that. In fact, I have some sheets. I can give you one. This shows 56 Scranton Avenue. It also happens to show 98 Scranton Avenue, which is Park Cleaners. I didn't go as far down as getting to the McDougal's property. But I think, and while I'm happy to do that, keep in mind that this is not this article at least, is not to rezone this property. This keeps it in the Marine District. This simply says any properties that there might be. I happen to think there are only these few. And of course, I've looked. Any properties which aren't on the water can get a special permit to have a greater percentage of their building be non-marine related, still limited to the uses that are allowed presently up to 50%. So I don't think it's an issue of where are these, although I think there are only a few, and I've described it, and I will give you such a map that gives it all. I think the issue is thinking about what the impact of the present language of the bylaw is, what the limitation is, and what its impact is on any property, even if it's just one, that is subject to it. I think that this provision is, at present, is disproportionate. It's unnecessary to protect the Marine District because it's not protecting the waterfront. It's counterproductive because it creates vacancies and because it's difficult to find a tenant that will fit. And it's really an unfair limitation on a use of property, not just this one, but the other ones, except that they're pre-existing non-conforming and so have an exception. It's not fair to properties which were developed many years before the Marine District bylaw was adopted. Anyway, I will give you what I did prepare. And,
Is that what this is?
No.
I haven't seen that.
Oh.
It's pretty close.
Okay, thank you. Well, and the property that you're representing is circled in yellow?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
It's at the corner of Robbins Road and Scranton Avenue.
Yep.
Is that the real estate office?
Other questions? Yes, Jim?
That's the real estate office.
I work at 56 Scranton Avenue, just
Jim
for
will have to
disclosure.
recuse himself.
Other questions? Okay, now I'll go to the public. Does anybody have questions in the public? Okay. I sort of messed up on the other two because I didn't close those hearings. That's what I wondered, if I could do that all together. I sort of thought I could, but I wasn't sure because I hadn't done it that way before. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Amend the zoning map from Business 3 to Business 1, 15,290 square feet at 65 Town Hall Square, Assessors Map 47A-008-007-000, Glenwood Place Nominee Trust.
Well, Madam Chairman, now I have a problem because I in fact am a part owner of 65 Town Hall Square, and I'm representing myself, my partner, and taking into account what Eric Turkington wisely said a few minutes ago. At the last town meeting in November, the town meeting voted not to purchase the office building known as 65 Town Hall Square, which is right next to this building and houses the Human Services office, which is part of the property that I have an interest in. This is to be distinguished from my office, which is right across the way. And there was quite a bit of discussion with the town. The town manager and the selectmen, prior to town meeting, were recommending the purchase of a portion of the property, namely the office building that's right here in Town Hall Square. There were discussions about how we would do this because it's presently a single lot. There is a duplex and a triplex residence, two residential buildings, which are on Glenwood Avenue, paralleling Town Hall Square, and with the office building on Town Hall Square. And the town planner suggested rezoning the property and as the discussion evolved before the last town meeting, we realized that if the property were rezoned from Business 3, it is presently business zoned, but Business 3, and changed to Business 1, which is the zoning around most of the rest of Town Hall Square, the Oddfellows Hall, which is a handful of feet from the building at 65 Town Hall Square, the abutting property, is Business 1 zone. My law office building across the way is Business 1 as well, and everything toward Main Street is Business 1. And if we extended the Business 1 district, that one lot, then it would be possible, in compliance with zoning, to divide the property so that the commercial office building could be conveyed separately from the residential buildings behind. And the zoning criteria that would require that would be yard setbacks. In the Business 1 district, we don't have a requirement for yard setbacks, whereas in the Business 3 district, just like in residential districts, there is a yard setback requirement. For whatever reasons, town meeting chose not to purchase the property, but the idea of allowing either the town to purchase the property in the future, should that come about, or to allow the sale of the business commercial property without the residences, the rezoning, the extension of the Business 1 district, one lot, made sense. It gives us as owners of the property more options in dealing with the property. It may allow more investment. There doesn't seem to be any disadvantage of changing the property from Business 3 to Business 1. Now I have some plans that may help you out. In the red or pink, I've indicated the extent of the Business 1 district existing. In yellow is the 65 Town Hall Square property. You can see the commercial building fronting on Town Hall. Actually, if we do it this way, it's the way it actually is. We're in this building right here, right now. This is the commercial office building. These are the triplex and duplex buildings. Now, surrounding it, there are no single-family residences surrounding this property across the street or otherwise. This is a blow-up of that, the office building, the duplex, the triplex. Next to it is a two-family house. This is multifamily housing. The assessors say this is apartment 4 to 8 units. This is multifamily housing. This property owned by the Clark Trust is 4 to 8 units also. But there are no single-family residences around it. And this is the Oddfellows Hall, which is slated for redevelopment as 4 apartments. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I pulled up the map in preparation, and my map shows the B3 zoning also encompassing 49 Glenwood. And if we would rezone yours, that would leave one parcel as B3 by itself.
That is true.
Because you said before there wasn't, you said yours was the only ones, but if what I got today, that two-family home would be B3 by itself there.
Yes, I didn't say that anything that said it was the only one. I said we would be extending, under this article, the Business 1 district for one lot.
Okay.
That duplex on that property is a single building. as compared to the situation at 65 Town Hall Square, which has 3 buildings in different uses. That is, 2 residential buildings and a commercial building for which there is some reason to want to be able to divide the property either for town purchase or other purchase. I recognize what you're saying is exactly true. Whether the town would choose to extend the Business 1 district another lot. At one time, that property was residentially zoned. At the time, the present owners of 65 Town Hall Square also owned that property. We rezoned it to Business 3. But haven't had any discussion with the owner of that property if they would like to be B1, but there isn't the reason for it. There's a very important reason for it, is that we have a commercial building that is 2 feet from the property line of Town Hall Square, and the 2 residential buildings, a duplex and triplex behind it, and the effort is to have a way within the context of the zoning bylaw to divide the property. And the Business 1 zoning allows us to do that. Now, it's true that in the Business 1 district, all the by right uses are virtually the same between Business 1 and Business 3. The only difference being that in a Business 3 district, any one type of establishment shouldn't have more than 4,000 square feet in it. Otherwise, the uses are all the same. Given the size of that property, it's not really, that limitation really isn't relevant. There are some special permit uses which are allowed in a Business 1 district, which will never be allowed on this property by the Board of Appeals, such as a motor vehicle gas station and so on. These are things, there are no by right uses that should cause any concern to extending Business 1 the one more lot.
Yes, Doug?
So in your request, will there be a provision to separate a new lot line between the residences and the commercial building?
Well, that would be another step. We would do that if there was a buyer who only wanted the commercial building and didn't want to also be a residential landlord.
And if we did extend the B1 to that entire property, you could have a buyer that might want to develop the whole thing and get rid of the houses and build right out to the lot lines.
Well, we already have a pre-existing non-conforming situation with the commercial building that is 2 feet from the lot line.
Right.
There's also a significant limitation with regard to the availability of parking on the lot. When the property was rezoned Business 3, town meeting specified that the parking for the business building would be in Town Hall Square. That's not true of the residential parking, which is now, controlled. You can't park in Town Hall Square overnight. But it makes sense, and I'm not saying this is what would happen, but to be able to divide the property in accordance with zoning between the historic, now, been there a long time, commercial use and the residential use makes sense. Again, although it will not be before town meeting, at the April town meeting, there has been discussion with the town about the property, further discussion about it, and we wouldn't be in a position to sell the commercial building without the residences, without doing this. Now, one could create a condominium, I suppose, and you could sell one building and not the others. The clean way to do it would be to be able to divide the property. And here we can do it simply by extending the Business 1 district, one lot. This isn't spot zoning, but just extending the business zoning in a situation where there are 3 buildings with different uses on a single lot existing today. might add, this is what the town thought was a good idea
Right.
when it was going to, was considering buying the property. At least the town manager and the town council, indeed, the town planners. I thought this is a good idea and appropriate.
Sounds like a good idea. I'm just thinking through the possibilities.
Is there any public comment on this? Virginia?
Virginia Valiela, Precinct 5. I came tonight because I wanted to hear the discussion on the warrant articles, because I've realized that you sort of discuss and close the hearings, and so if there's any time for comment, it's only tonight. I am not here in opposition or support of this particular article that's under discussion. I was a full-time selectman, so it has to be at least 20 years ago, when Mr. Ament asked me, did I think that the town would ever want to buy other property along Town Hall Square for future offices or town functions. And I remember hesitating and thinking, well, I probably won't, I don't know. But it clearly was a long-term investment concept that he had, which now, is finally coming to the table. Just as a town resident, I think that 3 buildings on one lot is an awful lot. And so I really am concerned about that, and I would not like to see us move in the direction of intensifying the uses of this property. I don't understand the ins and outs of all of the zoning to the degree that all of you do, and certainly not as much as Mr. Ament does. But I do think, sort of going to Doug's point, I think you need to think very carefully about the possibilities if you make this change. And you also need to think of it in the context that there was a property that was rezoned next to it that was also owned by Mr. Ament at one point. So this is a business proposition, and I think that the center of town is really important. The low, moderate income housing that's along Glenwood is very important. And as we move forward with a possible decision, that we want to make sure that we're consistent with preserving character, preserving housing, and to really remember that 3 structures on one lot is really a very unusual situation. Thank you.
Other public comment? Okay. And the final one that we're hearing under the zoning articles, amend the zoning map from Marine to Business 2 .448 acres at 56 Scranton Avenue, Assessors Map 47B-009-005A-033, Falmouth Heights Marina, Inc.
Well, again, for your record, I'm Bob Ament, and again representing Falmouth Heights Marina. This is the alternate proposal for dealing with 56 Scranton Avenue, and this article only deals with 56 Scranton Avenue. It simply says, rezone it from Marine to Business 2. The same zoning as is across the street. It's a relatively small corner lot. It's about half an acre, a little bit less than that. It's already completely developed. It has relatively little parking for the building of its size. The only way it really can work for any uses is because the same company or affiliated company owns the large parking lot immediately across the street. And decisions of the Zoning Board of Appeals have required that parking be allocated for the use of 56 Scranton Avenue across the street, which is perfectly in keeping with the zoning bylaw, which allows parking to serve an establishment to be across the street within 300 feet of the front door to the property, which is satisfied in this situation. The property is not working as marine zoning, which I've explained earlier, and I assume I don't have to repeat. The planning board agreed with that 2 years ago, and I think we tried it before then as well. This article asks that the town rezone this property to business use so that it will not be subject to the limitations as to percentage of non-marine related uses that applies if it's in the marine district. So it's very similar to the article of 2 years ago, which was supported by the planning board, except that it asks for B3 instead of business redevelopment, because business redevelopment is along Main Street but does not extend to the property immediately across either Robbins Road or Scranton Avenue. It is my opinion, as I said earlier, that the more elegant solution to this is to change with one sentence the marine zoning bylaw to allow the solution to be by special permit instead of by right. A special permit, the building in question on this that exists today is non-conforming, and any changes require going back to the Board of Appeals, and it doesn't have sufficient parking. So any changes need to be reviewed by the Zoning Board of Appeals. And it is a small lot that it's highly unlikely someone will tear the building down to redevelop it with something else. It's a narrow, small lot. One will take advantage of the existing building, which is much larger than would otherwise be allowed, or would be allowed today. So one solution, similar to what you did 2 years ago, just rezone the property. Earlier, we discussed an alternate solution. Thanks.
Questions from the board? Ralph?
Yes, Mr. Emmett, if the article to the previous article you proposed would pass,
Yes.
would you then expect this article to be recommended as indefinite postponement?
Yes, that's what I would expect. I think one possibility would be for the planning board to recommend the first article, the change to the language of the Marine District, and to recommend indefinite postponement as to the rezoning. That may more reflect what the planning board thinks is best, though I'm presumptuous of me to suggest that perhaps. And certainly if the article modifying the language of the Marine District passed, recognizing we still would have to go to the Board of Appeals to solve our problem of renting out the whole building. That's what, we've suggested. We think that's a good solution and protective of the town. So we wouldn't then ask town meeting to vote contrary to the planning board's recommendation. I suppose that one, not knowing, unless both articles passed on the blanket vote, if there is a blanket vote, I suppose it makes sense to have both articles held in case there's a reason to discuss the second one if the first wasn't passed. But my hope would be that town meeting would make this change to the marine district that I've described earlier, and that's a good solution, fair to the owner, protective of the town.
So would you then say that the first article would allow the town more input and control over that property than the second one?
I definitely think that that's the case.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Are there comments from the public on this or questions? Okay. So we're at the point of, is the board satisfied with what you've heard on these 4 different proposed articles for town meeting? So that we should close the hearing on these?
Will there be discussion at a later date of all these?
Well, that's the next question. Let's first
I move
get
that we
around
close
to.
the hearing.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, abstained. Now, the question is, do you want to sleep on this and discuss it at next week's meeting? Do you feel like you want to discuss them tonight, knowing that we've got a definitive plan to hear and that we have 2 other pieces of discussion? Ken?
I personally would like to research some things. There's some questions that brought up in my mind that I want to check on some of the articles before we discuss it.
Okay,
That's my
I think we have too many things
yeah.
to discuss.
Yeah, I think the public understands that with the hearing, they had the chance to
Right.
say what they need to say, and that we will discuss this at our next meeting. And I think there are people here waiting to hear the other items on our agenda, so
Yeah.
I'd like to move forward.
I also like to just sleep on something and think about it.
Same here. so.
Okay, so then we will take these up for discussion and our recommendations to town meeting at our next meeting, which is next Tuesday.
Okay.
If the weather cooperates, as it's not been doing lately. So we'll move on. The applicant is Old Main LLC for a definitive plan / special permit to create a 10-lot planned residential development at 96 Old Main Road, North Falmouth, Falmouth Engineering. And I believe there was a notice. Old Main Road.
Mike, you can throw that coat on the ground and use the video if you want. Help yourself.
That's not it.
No, it's right here.
Yeah, but I'm looking for
The notice?
that's not it.
Yeah. Location, Old Main LLC.
Okay, there it is, okay. Beg your pardon. Public meeting notice was published on 1/23/15, and 1/30/15, and 2/6/15. 29 abutters notices were sent by certified mail and receipts.
Thank you. Okay, for the applicant, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. My name is Laura Moynihan. I'm an attorney from Falmouth, representing the applicant. And with me tonight is Michael Borselli of Falmouth Engineering, whose firm is responsible for the engineering and survey work for the project. Also here tonight is Warren Dalton, who's the principal of Old Main, who's in the back row there, LLC. Warren is a local real estate developer. He's been responsible for West Wind Cottages, which is a project out in West Falmouth, as well as Fieldstone Place condominiums, another project in West Falmouth. So he's a resident of Falmouth. So this property is located in North Falmouth on Old Main Road. It's adjacent to the town of Falmouth property, the public land, which is a portion of the North Falmouth School. The application is for a special permit under the planned residential development sections of the zoning bylaw for a so-called cluster plan. The property in total is 11.05 acres. It's a large tract out there. It's zoned residential B. And it is located in a rare species habitat area as designated by the Massachusetts Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program for the eastern box turtle. So this project and this property is ideal as a result for a cluster subdivision. It allows for preservation of 63% majority or a good portion of the property as open space, which is shown here on the plan in the green. The plan that you see has been approved by the Massachusetts Natural Heritage, Fisheries and Wildlife. You have a copy of that approval in your file. They approved this plan on the basis that the portion of the site around the wetlands area would remain open space and undeveloped, and it met with their requirements for what's called a no-take of the land. So Mr. Borselli will present the details of the plan to you. I just wanted to make a few preliminary comments about the plan residential bylaw. The zoning bylaw, I know that you are familiar with it. You've seen cluster plans before. The bylaw requires that the lots contain at least 10,000 square feet of land, which they do, a minimum of 50 feet of frontage, which they do, and minimum average width of 75 feet. So the size of the lots, as you know, can be smaller with less frontage than you might see on a traditional grid-type plan. The idea of the bylaw being that if you cluster the housing development in an area, in a smaller area, then you have the ability as a result to leave the remaining portion of the property as undeveloped open space. So the area of the land to be developed is 36.5%. And as I said, 63.5% open space. That's about 7 acres of land that will remain as permanently undeveloped land in this particular area. The zoning bylaw requirement under the cluster provisions is only 40%. So this plan far exceeds the requirement for the plan residential development at 63%. The applicant's intention, in accordance with the bylaw, would be to convey the open space land to a homeowners association. This is commonly done with other cluster subdivisions in the town. And no recreational or agricultural activities are proposed for the open space. Sometimes you do see cluster plans where there are recreational or agricultural activities that are planned for the open space. The intention here is just to leave it alone and remain natural and undeveloped. The request for the approval for the 10-lot subdivision is based on 9 residential lots being available for 9 dwelling units under the traditional development provisions of the bylaw, or a so-called grid subdivision plan, which is required to be submitted with the application. And 1 additional unit being available as a density lot pursuant to the plan residential development provisions of the zoning bylaw. Those provisions are there to encourage development and open space areas that are adjacent to existing public lands or other open space areas, to try and facilitate the incorporation of large tracts of open space through the density bonus provisions. So that provision of the bylaw allows for an increase in the maximum number of dwelling units permitted up to 20% over that allowed under the traditional grid provisions of the bylaw. So here the applicant is seeking 1 density bonus lot under that section of the bylaw.
I've filed with the application an addendum which describes all of this for you, but essentially the bonus provisions of the bylaw are met here in that the planning board, and there are findings that the planning board must make. The planning board must find that the proposed open space abuts existing public open space or land protected by a nonprofit land trust. So here, the open space does abut a large tract of public land owned by the town of Falmouth. So that element of the bonus is met. The bylaw requires that the open space parcel contain rare, threatened, or endangered species, or the protection of the open space further protects rare, threatened, or endangered species on any adjoining parcel, whether public or private. So the open space parcel here, as I mentioned, is within the rare species habitat for the eastern box turtle. You have that confirmation in your file, and therefore the open space parcel within this development does contain those rare, threatened, or endangered species and meets the criteria of the bylaw. So the bylaw provisions are met for qualification for the density bonus. The planning board is also to find that the use of the proposed planned residential development and the provision of substantial open space will allow for the natural integrity of environmentally sensitive and wildlife habitat areas to be enhanced, and for scenic vistas to be highlighted and preserved. Those are findings as well that I would submit that you could make with this application under the bylaw. So that's the general overview. Mr. Borselli will now present the details of the plan and the engineering to you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's only 60 feet, 22.
Thank you, Laura. Madam Chairman, members of the board, my name is Michael Borselli, principal with the firm of Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. And we prepared the plan before you, as well as the other plans in front of you at the table. The subdivision was designed as a cluster subdivision, and it contains 10 lots. The lots are served by a new cul-de-sac that runs through the center of the parcel, being named Cobblestone Lane, and it will have frontage on Old Main Road. The length of the cul-de-sac is in keeping with the subdivision standards, which require a maximum length of 500 feet. And the lots are clustered along Cobblestone Lane in groups. There's lots 1 through 3 on the south side. Then there's a break, an open space access, and then there's a cluster of 4 lots. There's a cluster of 5 lots, 4 through 8.
Me too.
And then there's another open space break, and then there's 2 lots, lots 9 and 10. The entire west side of the property and the green, the 2 shades of green, is the open space area. The darker green areas are identified as wetland, and they have been taken into account for the calculations in your bylaw for determining setbacks and other requirements of the zoning bylaw. Our first step in looking at developing this land was to verify the delineation of these wetlands. We did that through a process with the Conservation Commission where we flagged the wetlands. We applied to the Conservation Commission for a verification of the wetland delineation. The Conservation Commission staff did in fact field verify the locations with us, and the Conservation Commission voted to basically issue a decision that they agreed with our delineation. The closest lot is no closer than 100 feet. This is a requirement of your zoning bylaw. So each of the lots, and any development on the lots would be in excess of 100 feet from any wetland resource. The construction of the road itself would be in excess of 100 feet from any wetland resource. The road was designed to work with the topography on the property. The center line has...
I can't hear you. I don't know if you're speaking into the microphone, if it's working or anything, but I cannot hear you.
It's not working.
Just speak up, Mike.
I will do my best. Is this even working?
It's just for the TV.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'll talk louder. So the lots, the roadway system, I was saying, was designed to work with the topography. The center line of this road has been staked out for viewing by the planning board. We also included as a requirement a road profile or road construction plan that has been designed in accordance with the subdivision requirements and standards within the town code at section 300. Part of the design requires drainage. So there is a series of catch basins on the roadway that have been designed in accordance with the subdivision standards. Drainage calculations were submitted. The lot or parcel slopes from Old Main Road in a westerly direction towards the interior of the development. So, of course, the road is designed to gently slope down from Old Main Road to the cul-de-sac, which has been designed, the geometry has been designed in accordance with subdivision standards for safe vehicular access and emergency vehicle turnaround. The drainage system itself is to be contained in an open space area that is on the direct north side of Cobblestone Lane. It will be surface recharge to a grassy area. There's a low point in this vicinity. There's a slight high point on the cul-de-sac so that the runoff would drain gently down to a low point from both directions. There are some intermediate catch basins that will also collect some of the road runoff. In addition to the drainage, there's a municipal water main, 8-inch water main proposed that has been designed in accordance with the town water department standards. There would be a single fire hydrant at the cul-de-sac, which is a requirement, and the other typical underground utilities, such as underground electricity and natural gas, are also contemplated to be in the road system. There is a sidewalk along the south side that runs along the entire length of the cul-de-sac and terminates in this location. We did have an initial meeting with the town planner, an assistant town planner, to go over the plans. And at that meeting, we received some input and made the revisions to the plans that were suggested by the planning board staff. I think that sums up the details of the design, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Brian, do you have comments?
Not at this time, Madam Chairman. Defer to the board and to the public.
Okay. Jim, you had something.
What's the date of the drawing you're presenting from right there? on the plate, what is it?
Initial date December 3rd, 2014. Revision date February 9th.
This is not.
You've got just the
See, we're looking at a
December 3rd.
different plans.
The revised plans were delivered to your office. They were,
We have January 29th.
Well, we've got December 3rd, so,
We don't have the same lots.
no. We're looking at something different from what you
right.
have there.
Like I said, there were some subtle changes in the lot layout. The plans were delivered to the planning office,
But this is, used to be over here. now it's over
but
here.
evidently not distributed to you folks yet.
The plans were delivered, they did it yesterday or today, but you have the original
February 9th.
submittals and the changes have been described by the design engineer.
No, I
Right,
understand
we'll
that.
see him
Jim and I
again.
were just puzzled.
We'll see him again. I was just trying to follow him.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some,
This is the old.
relatively subtle
This is-
changes. The number of lots is the same. Some of the layouts have changed slightly. This open space was shifted slightly.
Yeah, that's what was questioned.
Yeah, and we added the
This is
sidewalk,
more
which wasn't
current.
on the original plan.
Okay.
So we expect that there'd be a referral from the engineering department that we have not seen yet. We did our best to get the revised plans into you folks after the meeting with the staff.
This is a little bit
So,
Okay, questions from the board. Ralph?
Yeah, Mr. Borselli, the little strip there, the little green strip access,
yes,
yep, on our plan, it's way over by the cul-de-sac.
yeah, it was over here.
So what is correct?
This.
Okay, and why was that changed?
Well, it was changed at the suggestion of the planning staff to create better clustering of the lots.
Okay. And is there a sidewalk on Old Main on that side of the street, where that,
Yes, I
Where that
believe
road-
there might be a sidewalk on both sides, but there is a sidewalk. No. Oh, it's only on the west side.
it's on the west side? Okay, thank you.
Paul?
What are the plans for wastewater service in these lots? I don't see anything on these drawings.
Right, it's typically not developed at this stage of planning. The concept will be to have individual Title V septic systems with enhanced treatment as necessary on individual systems on each lot.
Very tight.
Another question?
Yeah, Bob, I checked.
Well, this is a definitive plan, does it, but he said something also regarding a special permit. Are we the special permit granting authority on this? Yes? Okay,
For this type of plan cluster.
right.
We are,
Okay.
yes. Doug?
Can we take a look at the original, the preliminary plan, the grid plan where you show the 9 lots?
We've got a copy of it
This
here.
is how he gets
Some of those are
lots.
sort of close to the
do the
wetland.
cluster.
Do they really all
That's what
fit?
this is.
They meet
He has
all
to
of
get lots
the
over there.
zoning bylaw geometrical requirements, which include a minimum of 40,000 square foot lot area,
No, I said this is how he
125-foot
gets
lot
9
width,
lots
'em and 100-foot minimum
on the property,
frontage,
and then he bunches them together.
and no part of any lot other than a corner can be less than 50 feet in width. The close proximity to wetlands would be, it is true, there are some of those areas that are close to wetlands, but those areas would be limited to driveway access only, which is considered limited review by Conservation Commission. The houses themselves, if that plan, which is not contemplated to be developed, were ever to be developed, the 125-foot diameter lot width circles that you see are where the home sites would be. So there would be a contemplation of probably common driveways to minimize impacts to wetland areas. But that's certainly true that there's some areas that a driveway would be closer than 100 feet to a well.
I see.
Just to add to that, Mr. Brown, that when you look at that plan, it's, I think, pretty obvious the benefits of the cluster, because you have development in that type of grid subdivision dispersed throughout the wetland areas, some within jurisdiction of conservation and some outside. But, you know, that grid plan shows the obvious benefit of the grant of special permit in this particular case, and the planning board being able to make the findings necessary under the bylaw in terms of the preservation of the natural areas and the environmental protection.
Right, certainly a better plan, but the cluster, I'm just wondering how we start at the base number.
Yes, Ralph?
Yeah, Mr. Barcelli, all of the property at the bottom of that property line there
Yes.
is town of Falmouth?
Yes.
And how is the town of Falmouth use that land right now?
Well, North Falmouth Elementary's there.
Okay,
There's a driveway system that's probably another 50 feet from the common boundary. There's a driveway that leads up and then over to the school, which is over here. There's a playground and basketball courts on that town land in this general vicinity. So, other than the driveway, everything else is on further south, baseball field in the school. So there's a significant buffer between these houses and that. On the North Falmouth Elementary property itself, and then also recognize, I didn't point this out, that there's a green open space boundary around the entire perimeter, north and south. That would be a no disturbance zone of 25 foot in width. So there's a significant buffer.
and please refresh my memory and excuse me for my lack of knowledge on this question, but when the new Silver Beach sewer system was put in, were not the injection beds for the effluent located on the property of the North Falmouth School?
They are located on the very far west side of the property of the North Falmouth School, which is generally over in this location, well beyond where the lots are proposed.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Okay. And members of the public? Do you have? Please go up to the podium and state your name.
What is this? That's private, huh? Okay.
I have other questions, but I want to just ask one.
Could we have your name, please?
I'm sorry, Lilia Franton, 114 Old Main Road, so I'm one of the adjacent properties or nearby. My question is, how can you make your decisions when you don't have the same map as the applicant is presenting here? Because I've got another one again.
We'll get
Is
the
this
right
number
one.
3?
We will
Seems
get
like
the
it
right
is.
one.
Yeah, so you will have the correct one. So you-
Absolutely. We're not going to be working off
Yeah.
of half
Okay.
a dozen different ones.
So tonight, this is just preliminary questions that you have?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Dan Small from North Falmouth. I'm a lifetime member of North Falmouth, a lifetime citizen there. Maybe I'm missing out on something fundamental, but I don't understand how you can put a development like this in the middle of a historic area. I just don't get it. Maybe somebody can explain it to me.
There is a historic district that runs at the front of the property, I guess I would call it. Everybody can see it. This is the historic district line here. Okay, so that runs all the way along Old Main Road. The historic district designation is a designation by the town of Falmouth, and properties within the historic district, as I expect many people here know, as the planning board, means that the structures and the landscape can be regulated through the Historic District Committee, Historical Commission Committee. Those bylaws, however, do not address subdivision development. So, to answer your question, only I believe it's the first 200 feet, 150 feet, excuse me, into the properties in the district. The rest of the property is not in the district. And secondly, even if the entire property was in the district, it wouldn't have any relevance on approval of a subdivision for residential lots under the Falmouth zoning bylaw or the Massachusetts subdivision control law. That would be a permit process that would be in place in terms of the actual housing development on the particular lots.
Madam Chairman, I had something to add to that, too. Again, I apologize if you don't have the plans, but there were basically 3 subtle changes. One of them was, again, at the suggestion of the planning staff, the lot lines were adjusted between Lot 1 and 2 in an effort to limit how much house construction would be within the historic district. There were, that means that the front 2 lots are the only lots that fall under the Historic District Commission review, as far as the criteria for architecture and things like that.
This whole line is way over here now.
Okay,
Should have put
thank
this
you.
over here.
Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
This over here along the historic district.
My name is Allison Whalen. I'm an abutter to the property.
What's your name, please?
Allison Whalen. I'm at 41. And I had a couple of questions. You started to talk about septic, because some of that's in our backyard, and with the drainage on that side, I was just concerned about that. But when I looked at the flood map, the flood zone maps, I was just wondering if somebody could clarify where the flood zone is up in that wetland. And then my second question was, this open space, is that public access open space or just open space for the residents in the homeowners association? Thank you.
Well, Mike can address the flood zone. As far as the open space goes, it would not be public open space. Essentially, it's not something that is desirable as far as the natural heritage program goes. To preserve the land means preserving the land and leaving it in its natural state, so it would not be designated as public open space.
Regarding the flood zones, none of this land is in a special FEMA designated flood zone. It's all elevated much above the 100-year flood plain. With regard to the septic systems on these lots will be very similar to anyone here who has a Title V septic system. All of the folks, including Ms. Whalen, have a Title V septic. In fact, these are likely to have even more enhanced treatment than even those systems have.
Yes, Virginia.
Virginia Valiela. I live at 193 Old Main Road, and I've lived in North Falmouth for 40 years. I knew the Hayes people who owned this property for many years, and so I'm actually familiar with it. I do think cluster development is a good idea for this property, and it is very nice habitat towards the back. I do have a few questions, or at least concerns, that I think should be raised. There's been no mention so far about whether there have been any soil corings done on the areas that are to be the lots. This is sort of a natural depression There are high properties over here. The school itself sits on a high property. There is vegetation along this border, but running through that vegetation is a ditch to help control runoff. So unless there have been test pits done where the septic is going to go, I think that there is high groundwater here. And so both basements and septics would need to be planned carefully. There may actually be, because of these, you see from these two wetlands here, there may actually be some sort of a peat layer down there, and so unless some soil corings have been done, it is definitely high up at the road, but it falls off, and you get down into rather peaty sorts of soils back here. And you clearly see it in this ditch that runs along the boundary where the school is. So that's my first areas of concern. The second has to do with the drainage. As you all know, we're getting more and more intense rain events. And so I think that the calculations for the drainage need to be looked at very carefully, and they need to include the driveways of these lots that are also going to drain into this road, not just the road itself. In calculating whatever 25-year storm or whatever the calculations were done for this area, this swale, I think there should be some questioning about what happens if this swale is full. Where does it spill to? And is it going to spill to house lots or, you know, again, without actually looking at the staking, would it spill to here? And then, as I said, ultimately there is a ditch that runs along. It's off the property, but drainage under extreme events, you need to think because you may create some flooding of your own right on these properties. Regarding the historic area, I am hoping that the developer, I've heard some positive things about him, and I am hoping that he will take into consideration that there is a lot of historic houses along that stretch, and that he would design them that would be fitting with that character. Okay. Those are my questions.
Virginia, may I
Yeah.
ask you a question? Your questions about soil corings tend to lead me to think you have questions about the permeability of that entire property. Is that correct?
Right. You may have wet basements,
Yeah.
number one, and you may have septic systems. You're dealing with small lots. You may have septic systems that will not have drainage fields or will have to be shallow drainage fields. Normally, when you design a lot, you're supposed to have a reserve area. These are, again, small lots, so without knowing some more specifics about the property, and the developer himself really should go out and do some test bits. It might, help everybody learn this, or that there's a problem here to begin with.
Okay, thank you. Michael, were you going to say something?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know because you got up and then you hid.
Maybe while he's doing that, Mr. Dalton could speak to Ms. Valliella's comments about the design, just for the benefit of the public.
Sure.
I know it's not a planning board issue, but it might help some people.
Hi, I'm Warren Dalton, and I'd just like to respond to the design criteria that you mentioned earlier. All of my projects have been in historic districts, except for the Nimrod. So the first 4 lots on this property, we definitely plan on making historic structures, colonials, Cape, in fitting with the whole street. That's my intent, to make it as seamless as possible as you drive down the street. So I just wanted to mention that, I'm very sensitive to the historic district and the nature and the architecture there, and just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
If I could respond just to the issue Virginia raised about the soil testing. We did soil testing. If you look on the road plan, in the upper right-hand corner, there's actually 6 test holes that were done. Some were done by the Hayes family prior to us. They're public record, and they were available at the health department. And we did our own test hole soil evaluations and percolation tests because we were aware of the potential for an issue with higher groundwater. And the soils, if you look at the test hole logs, are, from an engineer's point of view, the best soils you could hope for, from efficiency of draining, percolation rates. It was a medium sand to coarse sand with a gravel mix. The first 36 inches were topsoil and subsoil, and then we're in effect in what I would call just like glacial outwash material. Beautiful, very well-drained soil. There was groundwater. It was at the very lowest point on the property. We installed 2 monitoring wells that we're measuring. One in this very back corner, and then another one over here. They're basically at the same elevation. And the groundwater was observed on those lowest places about 5 to 6 feet below the ground. Now that is not going to be where the houses are or the septic systems, but it was a baseline for us. We're monitoring that because the wetter, there's a potential for groundwater to fluctuate, and in late February, March, and April is when it's at its highest. But that's why we installed the monitoring wells. This issue was raised in the very beginning. I think Warren would attest to that. We talked about it. In fact, we actually designed this roadway, I don't want to say backwoods, but keeping in mind the groundwater, keeping in mind the grade of the road and how the houses will relate to the grade of the road. The houses for curb appeal will all be slightly higher than the road. That's what is ideal. You like to have the house and the driveway pitched down slightly. The driveways have been taken into account for the drainage design. So when I say work backwards, we determined the highest worst case groundwater table, then we provided a level of safety factor of separation above that for the roadway, understanding that each individual house site will also be graded in a way. We paid attention to what the basement levels would be, so there's no issues in that. And we also paid, which is actually the critical, the design factor for this is the basement elevations as opposed to the septic systems, because basements are 8 feet on average deep, and the septic system has to be 5 feet above the water table. So both those were considered very carefully in this design. So I'm happy to tell you that we did do the test holes, and the soils were the best we could hope for. And the drainage was designed for those worst-case storms. It was designed for a 25-year storm event, which is what your subdivision regulations require. If there were an extreme extraordinary event, there's actually safety factor built into the system. This is the actual lowest place on the land, and in some real extreme event, you might see some puddling in the grassy swale that would then eventually just recharge into that very, very well-drained soil.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public?
Hi, my name's name's Ed Kaleskis, 85 Old Main Road, so this is kind of diagonally across the street from where we live. I have no objection to, a person buying property and doing whatever the zoning allows them to do. So the only question I have is a matter of density. The fact that this road is going to dump off sort of diagonally across the street from me. There's going to be, 20 cars, maybe more, using that every day, multiple times. The school is down the road, and if I understand the applicant's attorney's presentation, this plan has sort of a bonus lot thrown in because they're being such good guys about the wetlands and the box turtle. I would say anything that's a special, sort of bylaw that allow, if you give them some sort of special leeway for that, I would oppose that. You can put as much as you want, as long as it's not a special deal. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Nick?
Hi, my name is Nick Lowell. I'm in a butter directly to the north of the property. I just had three issues that I wanted to bring up. One, with respect to the groundwater. Since the testing has most likely all been done relatively recently, it was just a couple years back, the groundwater was significantly higher, and there, where my property is, directly to the north here, the terrain gently kind of slopes down into this property. And I have done some plantings in the back there and found the water table to be very close to the surface, one shovel width down, so let's call it a foot or less. So I think that I just encourage you to look very closely at those perk tests and the groundwater. I don't know the details of how that works. Second thing was, I do sort of have a question as to how closely you look at the grid plan, because that is the basis for the number of lots. And I encourage you to make sure that if 9's the number, 9's the number. I'm supportive of the cluster concept, and I think that I think that in general, this would be a much better cluster than it would be a grid. But I do encourage you to look very closely at the grid to make sure 9's really the right number. The third thing with respect to the entrance to the lot, and I don't know if you have any control over this or not, but the school driveway is just to the south. And some time ago, the driveway at North Falmouth Elementary actually moved. It was further to the south, and they moved it up to the north. The school zone for the 20-mile-per-hour school zone, that sign that starts that zone was never moved. So if it was at all possible, I would encourage us now with an additional road to move the northern end of that school zone north to hopefully somewhere north of the new road, so that the traffic sees the blinking light and slows down in the proper area. It's something that needs to be corrected. I brought it up to the school board before, but now that we have this additional road, it's just one more reason that should be looked at. So, but in general, I'm supportive of the cluster, but I do have just questions about the drainage, because I know that I don't think the water table is as low as it had, or I believe the water table is lower now than it perhaps has been in the past. I am interested in verifying that grid plan really, if 9's the magic number, then make sure that's really is the number. And yeah, in the school zone, that's my issues. Thank you.
My name is Ashwell White-Joyle. I'm the abutter at 108 Old Main Road. My two questions, first and foremost, some of the discussion about what's happening with the back 7 acres. My curiosity is that going to be deed restricted so that there will not be any further development on that in the future? My understanding from the wetland delineation is that basically that's an impossibility. So I'm just curious how that is going to be restricted. And then I guess a greater concern for me is right in front of my house is where Winslow Road drops in. It's a really busy, dangerous corner. And roughly where the proposal for cobblestone lane is coming out is right at the apex of the road there, of Old Main. And so my concern is over traffic patterns. It's already a really dangerous road. It's busy year-round. We've got the elementary school, we've got the fire department. It's a popular cut-through for vehicular traffic as well as families on bicycles, accessing the bike path. So my concern, like I said, is adding to that daily regular traffic flow. And I certainly hope that a traffic study is at least being contemplated. I would propose just making it a three-way stop sign there, but that's probably a little bit outside what we're discussing tonight. But it's something that I certainly hope for the safety of the people who already live there, as well as the proposal of the 10 or so people who are potentially going to be moving in, that's looked at. Thank you.
Yes.
Lilia Franton, 114 Old Main Road. I guess, I agree with the comments that have been made so far about questions about the plan. I too am in favor of cluster housing, but I think that it's too dense. I think in particular, I find the plan to put houses so close to Old Main Road on that front entry area particularly objectionable. Old Main Road has a character that is well known throughout Falmouth as being quaint. It's almost rural in its feeling. And I would think for new homeowners, they would not want a house that was directly on Old Main Road. I lived in a house that's about 30 feet back, but my house is built in 1806, and there was practically no road there then. I certainly would not have expected a new development to consider putting houses that close to a street. The other thing that I find objectionable is that by putting those houses so close to the street, there's going to be an additional problem for children who are walking to and from school, bicyclists, runners, pedestrians, old and young, cars that are coming down that hill, because at that point, Old Main Road begins to go downhill towards the school. People have a tendency to let up on their foot, and the speed gets increased as they go down towards the school. We've already heard the warning light for the school is in the wrong place. I've complained about it for years. So all in all, there's going to be obstructions from that driveway, from that cobblestone lane, to come out to the road, obstructions by those houses. I would like to see that area be landscaped properly. If it's cobblestone lane, how about making cobblestone wall with a grass area and some landscaping and push those houses back? I'd like to see less houses. I think Lot 1 and 10 should either be eliminated or pushed back so that there are fewer houses. I don't have anything to say about it except that as a neighbor, I would like to see the character and personality and unique feeling that Old Main Road has right now be contained and maintained and not be changed by a development. I realize that the developer has made some very nice housing in other areas, and he might very well do the same in terms of design of houses and so on, which is very nice. But I think the density is going to be a real problem for maintaining the character of Old Main Road. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Lowell, also the partner of Nick Lowell, and so in a butter on to the north of this property. My question was just about the open space, and I'm just not familiar with how that works for a private development. There was a question about whether it will be deed restricted and how that is legally handled, and what would, for example, prevent the development from encroaching over time onto that private space, particularly if it's managed by the association itself. I don't know what within that, what would protect the open space from encroachment along the edges, as it's shown as open space right now in particular. That seems like a vulnerable strip, but also towards the wetland area. Thank you.
Typically, the way these types of subdivisions work is that the open space is restricted through a condition of the special permit granted by the planning board. That's a permit that has to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds, so it runs with the title to the property, showing the prohibition on development of the property. In addition to that, this subdivision would have, like other subdivisions do, a set of restrictive covenants that would apply to each of the lots. Typically, your special permits that you grant for these cluster subdivisions require the developer to submit those to you. Those covenants would set forth provisions in terms of the prohibition on development or alteration of the open space area. Those covenants would be recorded at the Registry of Deeds and run with the title to the property. So the land itself would be conveyed to a homeowners association of the lot owners who would be responsible for their own subdivision. So that's the standard package nowadays for a cluster type plan. If you look at trying to convey these properties to, say, somebody else, or even to have the town of Falmouth come in, it's very difficult because there are management obligations. For example, if the Conservation Commission, looking at another property to manage. So the preference and the model under the bylaw is for it to be restricted through the special permit and the restricted covenants that get recorded against the title. Ms. Franklin commented on the lots closest to the street. I'd just respond briefly to that. It's my understanding, and I think the practice of this developer who's developed a couple of developments now within the historic district, that the town Historic District Committee and Historic Commission actually want the houses near the street. They want them facing the street. They want them near the street. They want to maintain the historical streetscape of these types of historical areas. So that's why when Mr. Dalton was talking about the type of houses and the houses facing Old Main Road, that's because we don't expect that our own town committees would approve houses being set back on the lots far off the street because it interrupts the historic streetscape.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question.
Please go up there and tell us your name. We have a viewing audience that can't hear you back there.
My name is Cindy Kaleskis. I live at 85 Old Main Road. And my question was to this lovely attorney. Are you sure, have you spoken to the Historic District Commission? Have they told you that they want those houses there?
Please address through the board.
Would you
Can't speak to
please
her.
ask her if she has spoken with the Historic District Commission as to whether that is exactly where they want those houses, or is that just an assumption on her part? Thank you.
Well, I appreciate being called lovely. Thank you.
And it is true.
It's a good day when I'm called something nice. Anyway, that's our understanding from previous experience. Also, when we met with Mr. Curry and Ms. McCollum, Ms. McCollum, as you know, works with these committees. It was her comment in that meeting that the Historic District Committee / Commission would want to see the houses nearest the street within that district. So that's why the plan is as it is.
Yes, Brian.
This is a point of order from the board.
Yeah.
Remember, subdivision control law.
It's not ours.
Lots, and you're laying out the way.
Yeah, we're not laying out the design or.
Not laying out
Or the
design
Board of Health, I should
Forest locations. The short answer is you have the jurisdiction of the district commission.
That is true, we don't.
Let that get lost in the weeds.
Listen, but we can't do anything.
I would like to know if this has even been planned. It looks as if it has been because there are little circles indicating where the houses would be located generally. How far off the street this house
You
would
can't
be?
answer that.
You can't answer that?
No.
Okay. The other thing
Furthermore,
is-
those circles that you're referring to just prove that there is space on the lot for, what is it, 120-foot radius, something like that.
Right.
That there's room on the lot.
For that house.
For that house, yes.
And so then the other point I would make is, if you've ever visited that area, there's a house set back about 150 feet beyond the sidewalk. So it would be consistent for housing to be put in, new housing, to be set back.
But see,
they're
we
not
don't
all
have
close.
anything to do
Okay,
with that, so.
I understand.
That's out of our jurisdiction.
Okay.
When you made the comment as to the number of lots.
Yes.
That's something we can decide on, but the design of the house and that kind of thing, that's out of our purview at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
Is there anyone else who wishes to say something? Yes, sir.
Ed Giordano, 81 Old Main Road. I just got a question about traffic. There's a nasty little hill there, the crest, you're familiar with it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm not certain where it is on this map. But can somebody point it out? The crest of the hill?
What?
I would say it is.
Well, anyway, the reason I...
Okay.
Okay. The reason I bring it up is that when you're traveling south on Old Main Road there, you see nothing until you crest that hill. So I don't know where it is in relation to that road. If that road happens to be just on the other side of the hill, it's an accident waiting to happen.
I'm aware of it because I go to precinct meetings there, and I miss that turn in every time to the school, so I'm totally aware of what you mean coming down the hill.
And I just want to know if anybody has looked into that.
What we will do as a board, but that's a question I'm going to ask at the point at which there is no more comments as to whether we wish to have a site visit.
Thank
you. Okay?
And just remember too, Pat, the engineer's referrals in here. And
Right,
the
we
site
gotta do
visits
that's their
will be
job.
addressed when you get the engineer's referral.
There are a lot of things that we don't have yet. This is not it tonight. We need more information coming in. Part of the information that we'd like coming in is actually, I think, I have to get a show of hands of the board as to whether we want to do a site visit on this property or not. And then we will make a request, and hopefully we will do so.
I have
But-
one more question.
Given.
Okay. Okay, Mike, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to point out that we staked the center line of the entire road. Maybe you won't have to wear your snowshoes by the time you go, but we had to when we staked it. So you'll know where the center line is, and you'll be able to get a good idea of where you are on Old Main.
Great. I did hear you say that, and I was appreciative of that. And Doug, you had a,
Yeah, just one other question. So given that we have the large school area, we'll have potentially 6 houses on the one side, that would be a pretty significant change to the neighborhood. Are you considering any screening of like arborvitae or anything to kind of hide the number of houses so it doesn't look like a big development? I know it's not really our purview, but it's just a question.
Well, on this plan, right here already, the vegetation comes out quite a bit. It sways like this. And then we have a 25-foot buffer.
Yeah.
And then the houses, as you see, are set up a little bit more. So I think it's going to be significant enough what's almost existing already. That should be undisturbed. It's going to be a nice,
Pretty good.
natural, existing buffer.
Okay.
Virginia?
I just want to second what he said. This lot is very nicely vegetated now, and if it is developed sensitively in putting in the road and leaving not the natural buffers and stuff on, woodland on the lots themselves, I think it will go a long way. The vegetation is actually quite dense.
Any other comments or questions that the board has tonight? Yes, Ken?
I have kind of like something I want to bring up. I actually want to reference the grid plan, because density has been a lot of questions that were asked here. I'd like to go to the grid plan and ask the length of the driveways on lots 4, 6, 7, and 8 on that grid plan, because this whole plan is based on there being 9 lots on the grid plan with a bonus of 10. And I'm looking at the grid plan, and I have a question about that.
So that is probably future information that Mike will
May have to be.
give the answer to.
May I ask how that's relevant, the length of the driveways?
As to if it's a subdivision.
But what difference does it make under the bylaw or the subdivision control law, how long, I mean, we can tell you how long a driveway would have to be, but I don't see.
I just asked the question.
Okay, so you'd like to know how long a driveway would be
How
to
long the
get
driveways
into?
are on these 4 particular lots.
Okay, which were the lots again?
4, 6, 7, and 8.
We'll have Mr. Borselli measure from the road frontage into the building area for you and give you that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does the board have any other questions? Okay. Then, Brian, what? Okay, I was going to ask, I'm assuming that I have to have a show of hands. And do I have to have a motion on that, since it's a policy of ours now, or just a show of hands as to how many people want to do a site visit on this piece of property?
I have a question.
Yes, Jim?
How much time do we have for the site division? I would like to be able to walk
So would I, and we have
this
until,
land.
we have until May 26th.
If we put-
Okay, so,
Let's put it off.
if we've got 2 feet of snow.
I do not want to go now.
No, I do not want to go now, but I think this should be something that we're prepared to do, say, what, March maybe, sometime?
How about we do this, because we're still waiting for a great deal of information back from other town departments. How about we continue the hearing to Tuesday, February the 24th,
Okay.
6:30 here in the town hall. You'll be able to get some answers to some of the questions that have come up tonight. And then at that time might be a good time to ask property owner about view of the site. Hopefully by then, we won't have 3 feet of snow.
Yeah, okay, this was this one here.
We hope.
How's that sound for everyone?
I think that's a plan.
All right, on behalf of the applicant, we would request the continuance to February 24th at 6:30 PM.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you all very much for coming. Oh, I need a motion to continue this.
I'll move.
Second.
Moved and seconded to continue to February 24th, 6:30 PM in this room. Okay? So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Yes. Yes, because it'll be a little noisy.
I'm going to stand up.
So we're gonna have a little adjournment here, recess, while everybody's moving out.
I don't know what it is, I can't take the cold anymore.
driveway with snow?
relied on you for the
You got
creative
to call
thing.
the
We get all
DPW.
the
Back in order, let's go.
Did they take care of it?
You sit down.
What do you do?
Let's go.
Okay, folks, I'm calling the meeting back to order, so.
Okay.
Gotta go.
See ya.
Okay. Next on our agenda are referrals. The selectmen want our advice on whether or not to take White Pine Lane as a public way.
Okay, so board members should
Tell them
have
to pound sand.
Small plan?
a copy of the small.
Get everybody here.
You see these types of- It's actually a referral from the taking law for public land. Get a referral from the board, in my opinion, 45 days to offer them a recommendation as to whether or not this way should be taken as a town-accepted way. The thinking now is the application is under the betterment program. Where we construct a certain subdivision standards. And you see it connects Sandwich Road, a public way together with Lake Shore Drive. So some of the criteria are the interconnections of public ways, common convenience and necessity, position on the betterment list, the imposition of any subdivision control issues, any conditions of the planning board, for this board, and there are none. As you know, this was a topic of discussion at the last town meeting. The selectmen would ask for your consideration as to their recommendation, whether it should be accepted or not. We typically don't take a view of the property, especially under the current conditions. Typically look at a plan and then a recommendation from the board. If you're out and about, you can take a look. I know it's kind of snow covered at the moment. It's hard to see it under a snowpack. But to be taken and be under the betterment program, and would then be reconstructed. That's it in a nutshell. I'm answering your question.
So it would not be a cost to the town taking it under the betterment program, is that?
It'd be under the betterment program, that the exact split is to be determined. My sense is there'll be some cost sharings with the town and the property owners. My sense is that the way is typically used more than just by the direct butters that are on, pretty much cut through from Sandwich Road to Lake Shore Drive. But that would be a determination of the Board of Selectmen. They're not looking for a recommendation as to the betterment split here. They're looking for a recommendation as to whether the way should be accepted.
Okay. Is there discussion on this?
I'm familiar with the road. I don't think it's a bad idea. And Lake Shore is public, correct? Right. Yeah. So I think it makes sense to connect two public roads.
Sandwich Road's a major artery?
Yeah.
Pardon me, I can't hear you.
Sandwich Road's a major artery.
Thank you.
Okay, but I don't think we're going to have any, so thanks for offering. Does anybody have any negative feelings about this that they wish to express? Okay, then I would need a motion, if you're ready to do so, that we advise the selectmen that we think it's a good idea to take White Pine Lane as a public way.
So moved.
Second.
Okay?
I didn't hear what your motion was. You were,
That we,
Do we think it's a good idea to take White Pine Lane as a public way?
and the motion is
that,
That we...
to take it.
To recommend.
We recommend to the selectmen. They're going to make the decision. We're just, it's a referral.
I understand that. I didn't hear the motion.
Okay.
okay, that is the motion. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I am.
Okay, abstain. So, one opposed and 6 in favor. Okay, now the selectmen, Brian will speak to this, would like the planning board to act as the local housing partnership, and this is in regard to LIP applications.
It's some of a misnomer. The town actually doesn't have a local housing partnership. Some towns do. Duxbury used to have one. Tewksbury had one, a conglomeration of entities. Projects that we see out here like Oddfellows Hall, Glenwood Ave, are known as local initiative program projects, where the town is actually a co-applicant under Chapter 40B, usually with a private development entity or corporation. And when the town and the development entity make an application to the state, the Department of Housing and Community Development, if there is a local housing partnership, they would like the housing partnership to sometimes chime in. You don't have to have one. The selectmen can do this on their own initiative. But here in this community, the selectmen have designated typically the affordable housing committee to take on this one role, which would be to chime in or recommend whether or not this should be a LIP project. The questions come about now whether or not the planning board would like to take on that one responsibility to be, for lack of a better term, sort of the local housing partnership or that other entity that makes a recommendation on LIP projects to the state. I can recommend to the board, I think it makes a lot of sense because this board writes the goals and policies, the housing elements. You write zoning articles to implement them. And you're very familiar with complex site plans. So structurally, not planning boards, not the incumbents on this board or any other committee, I think it's good for the town that the planning board be a part of the decision-making process for these local initiative projects. And that's the discussion I think the board should have tonight. And if the board is interested, then I think it's something we should take on and discuss with the board of selectmen, something good for the town. And that's that in a nutshell.
So may I have some discussion?
I have a question. Who currently fills that role now?
Now, there is an affordable housing committee that would take on that. And by the way, there's maybe one LIP project a year.
Right.
One of their responsibilities is to look at that. Maybe 2 a year. But does it make more sense for the planning board to be taking on that responsibility, given its abilities, given its structure, given its role and responsibilities in the housing arena? And I think that's a good thing for this board. Actually, my recommendation to the board is I think it's something you should be looking at. I think it's something you should be involved in. I think it's a very important component of our planning and implementation. Sometimes the planning and the planners and the planning board gets lost in that, doesn't have a role in implementation. I think it would be a good thing. We have had some discussions with the members of the board of selectmen. It's really about what makes sense from a structural standpoint for some of these more complex projects. Anyone for discussion with the board?
Another question? Just for discussion purposes, another example of a large LIP or something that's happened in the past. So are we talking Oddfellows? Is that?
Oddfellows is one.
Right, but that's a small little one. I was thinking there's not much planning involved for the one building.
How about the one on Old Barnstable Road?
Old Barn, yeah, one on
Mill Road, Millway, or whatever it was?
No, Tantico Woods on Woods Hole Road, I think is part of a project.
Well, that's coming at us, right?
That's under construction.
No, it's okay.
All right, the subdivision, the three-house subdivision on,
St. Mark's.
thank you, Marks Road is an example. Holly Park.
Okay.
Holly Park right now is a 10-unit condominium project. They want to go to a 12-unit rental. And the site planning is off of northbound highway, the 28A is a larger one.
So,
But they're typically,
so these are things we would have only done a site plan review in our present responsibilities, is that correct? Wouldn't even done that?
We wouldn't have seen them At all.
At all, okay.
Because
That's what I'm trying to get at.
these are Chapter 40B projects.
Yeah.
And those Chapter 40B projects are sustained by the Board of Appeals as an uncompensated.
Now I get the point. That's what I was trying to understand.
So,
I'm all set.
usually Ward and Chesterfield, Ward and Cloverfield was a LIP project. Hunt Street was a LIP project. You know, we get a few, 1 or 2 a year. But it's the only, right now, some of these projects, because there are very few subsidies out there, LIP is becoming a much more used mechanism in this town and in others. And I think the planning board is well equipped to be offering its expertise in these areas. And I think is a role, actually very small, not small, a component of the responsibilities, I think, that are actually inherent in the board.
And I think that having a public board take that role is more appropriate than a committee where it's not right out in public view.
Well, we also meet quite regularly, too.
Televised.
Again, the transparency is good and all that. Is it a role the planning board thinks is important for its roles and responsibilities? It's not a heavy workload, but I think we might be seeing larger projects down the road.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something, and especially in light of our discussions on the LCP committee, that housing is a big component of that, and how we like to see things up front, and I think we have a lot of information that other boards or committees wouldn't have, as we found out in the past, where we were privy to different information than other people. I think it would help make for better decisions in the long haul.
Oh, Ralph.
Yes, Ralph?
Yeah, a LIP, as I understand it, is sort of like a hybrid 40B. How does, if we do this, how will it impact the zoning board of appeals?
Well, the zoning board of appeals will still issue the comprehensive permit. You will essentially be part of the application.
Okay, thanks.
Yes,
And
Doug?
it also will, we won't be able to really have any real say, but it'll give us some input to the project where we would have none otherwise.
Right.
Actually, together with the board of selectmen, you will mold the project.
Do the whole thing?
You'll be involved with the board of selectmen. You can actually have a chance to mold the project.
Which is really what we should be doing as a planning board, too.
Right.
Housing,
Right.
as Bob said, is a huge component of us as a community. So,
We'll be making recommendations, but, not, or will we actually putting conditions on it?
No, you won't be issuing the permit.
Okay.
You will actually be the applicant.
Designing, help design, build.
Okay,
correct?
now, yeah,
I mean,
that's why Doug said,
so it would be, now I understand. It's us.
It's you.
helping the town with affordable housing.
Big difference
did
than
you
what I
all
was
take,
going there.
did you all
No, it's a
take
big
this up
difference,
last
yeah.
night? I know, okay, because I knew it was on,
It's huge. Ourselves.
waiting for us, okay. So, should the Board of Selectmen decide that they want to give us this responsibility, assign us this responsibility, are we in favor of accepting that?
I would make a motion that the planning board accept this responsibility if it's given to us by the selectmen.
I'll
Pay is
second.
right.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Right?
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. And now you're going to hand it to us on a silver platter, right?
Okay, we're voting Monday.
Any future agenda items that people would like to see? And I know, Paul, you've given a whole list and they're working through. Yes.
We are trying to work on 3 items for you coming up. I know there's interest in the Main Street project out here, Cape Cod Commission project out here, and I'm working on a joint meeting agenda with the Board of Selectmen, hopefully in early March, when we will address all of that.
Okay.
I know the board's anxious, and I'm anxious.
And coastal resiliency. I say it every week.
I know.
We did have a meeting on resiliency, that will also be coming.
Brian, are you working on that as an evening meeting or a Saturday workshop? Because it sounds like there's an awful lot that wants to be shoehorned in there.
It's to be determined whether it be on the selectmen's agenda or a separate meeting on a Tuesday night, more likely.
An evening meeting? Okay. And, Ralph?
Right, at some point, when you have nothing else to do, Brian, I would love to hear your tutorial on spot zoning.
Good point.
Okay, now, right,
Before you close.
no, what?
Before you close, I have a comment.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
During the discussion on Old Main Road, there was some discussion about a site visit, but I didn't hear the result of that site visit. Was there a vote in favor of a site visit or not?
Not yet, but the impression given to everybody is, yes, we are going to go on a site visit when the snow finally melts. So,
Okay, so the intent that we'll pick it up next time, if it's a site visit, we'll decide at that time.
correct,
Thank you.
okay? There is no correspondence in that little purple folder. And our next meeting is February 17th, so a week from tonight. And could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.